Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Marr, and I'm here today because I want to talk to you about the first lesson that we're going to do in the Art of Mindfulness class. A couple things to keep in mind. This is an intermediate class. I would never do this as the first project for an intro class, but the understanding is that you've all had, as a prerequisite, Art Foundations. And in Art Foundations, we learn about design, all the different elements and principles of design. We do some linear perspective, color theory, narrative art, and using narrative clues. So the understanding is in this class, or any intermediate class, whether it be this one or painting or drawing, you already have a foundation of that. I do not expect you to have mastered three-point perspective, but you've at least been exposed to all of these. And you might have some areas you love and some areas you don't, but if you need them, you've got sort of a bag of tools to pull out. In the intermediate classes, I want to focus more, not on, we're going to focus on skill, and we're going to build on the skills from foundations, but I want to focus on your thinking and the creativity and the ideas. And you can have a little more say in what medium. You always had a choice, but it's wide open this time. But also about expressing yourself and about the creativity involved in coming up with the ideas. Because I think some people have a harder time with the concepts than they do with using the tools or the skills or the design theory. So before you actually are doing the project, we've done a guided mindfulness where we talked about your imagination and viewpoint and what you saw in your imagination through a series of questions that I asked you. After that, we wrote in our sketchbooks and reflected on what we thought about in the mindfulness, which also included emotion and feelings. Okay, so that's a starting point. You may decide after you listen to this video that you have other ideas that came to mind, and it's okay to deviate from what you wrote or what you imagined during the guided mindfulness and expand on your idea and take it where you want to take it. Because this project, even though you have a lot of say, you're still doing it to learn more and take your work to the next level. So it's important that you start with a medium that you feel somewhat comfortable with. It's okay to make some, be adventurous, make some changes, try some new things, but it's not a good time if you've never taken ceramics to do something ceramic, that sort of thing. But the idea is to build on where you are, and everybody's at a different level, and you may have be coming in with different experiences. Maybe some of you have taken drawing and some of you haven't, but you've all had foundations. So, having said that, this project, we're going to call it From Where I Sit. And what's important is that it comes from your mind and you buy into it and you can follow it through. This is the first big project. We've done some exercises already in the class, but this is your first big project. So everybody needs to include where they're seated. Now, you could be in the seat and show that, or you can be from the perspective of where you're sitting. It's all about what you view. It's viewpoint. It may or may not include different linear perspective, depending on what you're looking at. But if it calls for it, include it. Don't ever be afraid to say, Mrs. Marr, I know we went through perspective when I was a freshman and took foundations, but I really don't remember it. You won't be alone. No, you know, I'm still learning. And I've taken foundations a bunch of times. So don't ever be afraid to ask a question. I want you to follow your vision, even if it means you need to learn something new to do it. Okay? Don't take the easy way out and pick something that doesn't call for linear perspective if you know in your heart of hearts that it should be in there. Same thing with the medium. It's wide open. You get to choose whatever it is you want to do in terms of the medium, but it needs to express your viewpoint Not just visually what you're seeing, but how you're feeling. Okay? Let's take a look at an example, and I have to stress this is an example of a project that I did based on a moment in time. It was more than a moment in time, but a moment of time. So it's got a lot to do with anxiety. That doesn't mean that I'm always anxious. So this doesn't have to define you completely. It just has to be a feeling that you felt. And where you're seated is a metaphor and in some way a jumping off point to what it is you want to say about yourself and your feelings. Okay? It'll take some time to think about it, and maybe the guided mindfulness will help, and maybe you need to jump off in a different direction after we've talked. But let me see. Let's turn to the picture that I'm working on, and it is by no means finished, but I'll tell you a little bit about where I started from with this. I would call mine in the driver's seat. And I started this after I had a pretty bad accident. I had all of the artwork. I was bringing artwork home from a show that we had at a warehouse, an artist studio space where there's, I don't know, 50 or 100 artists, and they let us use their space. So I had all of that year's artwork, last year's artwork in the car. And the track team was behind me on a bus and watched it. So what ended up happening was I was at a point where I was turning. So I was stopped waiting for the oncoming traffic, and somebody, probably texting, didn't see me and rammed right into me and totaled the car. I was fine. Most of the artwork, amazingly, was fine. But it really did a number on me emotionally. First of all, totaled the car that I absolutely loved. That was a huge car that would fit full-length folding tables and easels and all the things that I cart around, and tons of artwork and lumber when we're working on the house, sort of thing. So I was stressed out. I drive an hour back and forth to school every day, so I needed a car. And financially, it was stressing me out because the insurance companies wouldn't pay what I needed to buy a car the size I wanted to buy. But more importantly, I was very uncomfortable behind the wheel of a car. I just was I lacked a lot of trust in whoever was pulling up behind me, but I was just very jittery. So this was at that point. I decided in terms of medium to go with black paper and work with lighter media on top of it, because I wanted to get that feeling of darkness. The other thing to know is that this was basically, and it's not realistic at any point, but this was the new car that we ended up having to get. And we had a vacation planned, or I had a vacation planned where I was going out to a family cottage that I absolutely loved. It is my happy place. But I was very stressed about the long drive to get there in a car I hadn't driven before. So my choice of seat was going to be the driver's seat, partly because I wanted to show the anxiety that I was feeling behind the wheel of the car, and partly because I knew that I, quote unquote, had to get back up on the horse, and you know, if you fall off the horse, you get back up again. I didn't know any of the instrumentation. This car had all sorts of bells and whistles and things that I hadn't figured out yet, but it was time. We rented the place, so I was going anyway. And the place, I was going by myself on it's a cabin on a lake, down a very dark dirt road in the woods. So I was stressing. The reason I picked this car was for that reason, but I also thought it lended a lot of opportunity for maybe not the lesson we're doing now, but something similar, maybe a couple different lessons. I originally, when I did it, actually, this was my original concept, which brings up another point. Make sure that when you get your idea, part of what's expected is that you do thumbnails and take photo references. I don't have any right now, but I took all sorts of pictures behind the wheel of the car to kind of get the proportions right. And you know, you can make changes, nobody's going to know, but you want to lay that all out before you start. I took photos, but I didn't think ahead. I got more ideas as I went along. So if I were just to do this, it'd be just about the instrumentation panel, and it would be about control. And you can use symbolism in your work too. So, for instance, think about things you need to control in your life. Maybe there's a gauge that, like as far as weight goes, you know, I've been struggling with weight, losing a lot of weight, gaining a lot of weight. So maybe I would make one of these symbolically like a scale. Or if you're having trouble with your grades, maybe one of these is going to read like a report card or a graph of grades going up and down in different classes. You can use what you put into your picture, those narrative clues, to help tell your story and what you're trying to get across in this slice of life in this moment. Not your whole story, but whatever you want to express in this. So you could do something, and you don't have to do a car at all. You could do, I don't know, you could be in a lawn chair on the beach enjoying a great book, or, you know, whatever you want it to be, and whatever emotion you want it to be. So I thought deeper into it, and I also decided, well, maybe I want to include the rearview mirror, and maybe I want it to be where I've been and where I'm going. So I decided I could have had some sort of other world in the background. I could have had the car coming up behind me. Or it could have been a happier, less stressful time. I decided to go with just a close-up. One of the pictures that I took actually had my face in the mirror, and I thought I could play on one of the narrative clues that we talk about in foundations, which is expression. So gesture, expression, props, clothing, environment, supporting characters are the things we talked about that help tell a story. Not necessarily all of them, there are other ways. But my thinking process decided I wanted to have some sort of visual to like represent me without having to draw a picture of me behind the wheel from a third person viewpoint. I also, this is not finished by any stretch. I really actually want to bring it into school and get your ideas as to where I should go with it. But at any rate, this provides me the opportunity to not only get the controls in my life going down here, but where I'm headed, okay, and potentially where I've been, okay? So that's one idea. As far as materials go, you want to use whatever you're comfortable with. Let's talk for a moment, and you can start with white paper. You can do it however you want. In this case, I wanted that moody darkness, and I also wanted to play with something that I got that I hadn't used before. These are metallic gel sticks, and these are, I don't think they're metallic, but they're more gel sticks. And I got really into gel sticks, I guess, when I was ordering. And we have some of these at school now because of it. At first I thought I wanted to keep it black and white, but then I decided I wanted to put pops of color that help draw the viewer's eye around. But we can put this anywhere. There's a certain amount of opacity to these, okay? When we talk about opacity, opacity is something that you can't see through. It can be transparent or semi-transparent. I decided I wanted some areas that would stand up white. I may put some gel color on top of some of the rocks and the trees in the distance. However, there was sort of transparent, so you could see the black through it. And in some cases, that's a good thing. But in other cases, I wanted it to be more solid white underneath and build on that. So I think the best thing, if, and it's just an if, you were going to go with a black paper in the background, I think probably block out white acrylic gives you the most opaque, solid coverage of the black. However, there are also pastel pencils that you could use. Let's see, where am I going to put this? I don't know, let's just say in one of these trees. This is pretty opaque too. You could use pastel sticks, and these come in colors, not just white. You could use color pencil, which I don't think would cover quite as much. There are these Prismacolor sticks. This is basically colored pencil without the wood around it. It's just in a stick form. So if you're covering a lot of ground and you can get it out, this will do that. Okay? Not quite as thorough. I mean, you can layer it and it will become as thorough. But probably the pastel will cover a lot better. You can use watercolors, which will be very transparent. You can use gouache, which is more opaque than watercolor, but probably still not as opaque as, you know, the block out white acrylics. Okay? There's that, and there's pastels that are chalkier. The difference is the colored pencils aren't as chalky as the pastels. Okay? So that's up to you. And there are a million of other materials you could use. You can incorporate more than one. I'm going to spot color, like the hazard light is spot colored there. I really want to talk to you guys because I think it's a lesson in itself about expressiveness as to, you know, what we could do in the dials, what we could do in front of us, what we could do behind us. But let me just see if there's anything else we need to talk about. The solution for you, okay? Be clear. You do not have to do a card. You do not have to do anxiety. You do not have to do black paper. You don't have to do black and white. You don't have to do color. It's totally up to you from whatever you envision. As a matter of fact, you can do your viewpoint from wherever you are, and you're going to use narrative clues to sort of show. Like maybe if you were, I don't know, at a resort in Aruba, on the beach, maybe your feet would be in the picture, and whatever maybe you're looking at, maybe your tablet or whatever, or, and then beyond that, the beach or whatever it is you see. So there are a lot of choices for you to make, but I have to be clear that if I'm saying do whatever you want, I mean in terms of your self-expression and your materials, but the quality still needs to be something where you're building on what you learned previously in foundations and building more knowledge and experience. So do whatever you want means express yourself how you want and get there how you want, but still put the time in for the expectation of quality. The same rubric is going to apply that we always use, which is partly about your use of the medium, partly about your concept, and definitely, as always, refinement is part of the rubric. I'm missing one of them. I can't think of it right now. But those three particularly are going to be what you're graded on. If you don't have a good idea, maybe you have an idea but you don't know quite how to form it, it's okay to talk to the people at your table or talk to me and brainstorm with each other until you come up with something. And definitely do the thinking in thumbnails and take photos, because the more you do that, the stronger your end result will be. You can always change it along the way if you have a better idea, but it's going to make your end result stronger. And doing what you want doesn't mean doing last minute. It means having more control over your artistic expression, but still pursuing learning to use the materials and develop your skills. Okay? So I'm really anxious to see what you guys come up with. And the only other thing I want to tell you is there will be a reflective portion of this at the end, where you write a paragraph that could go with it if we put it on display, or it's partly for your own reflection, partly for me and other people in the class to see. But you want to explain why you chose the materials you chose, why you chose the imagery you chose, and any metaphorical or symbolic aspects of it that help express the mood of the feeling or the story you're trying to tell. So I can't wait to see what you come up with, and let's get started.